What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Long Run Project. My name is Dan, and we're going to do a little race recap video of my first 50-mile race. This past Sunday, I ran my first 50-mile. It was the Jack Bristol 50-mile in Connecticut. The course was very beginner-friendly. It was flat, it was fast. The course itself was a small, like 2.25 mile out and back, and then 7.6 mile loops. For a 50-mile, I had to complete 6 loops. Yeah, the race went very well, but it did not go as expected. So let's get into it. Let's break it down. The race itself was very successful, right? I went into it having a couple of goals that I needed to accomplish and work at. My first goal was a sub 12-hour finish. My second goal was sub 10, and then my third goal was sub 9. I had another goal of kind of testing my hydration and nutrition plan, kind of shake that out and see how things were on a run past 20 miles. And then I also wanted to test my shoes, see how those went, and kind of see if I developed any blisters or had any issues with them on a longer effort. The strategy for this race was pretty simple. It was to start out slow and kind of keep the effort consistent. I wanted to hit, I think, 90 grams of carbs per hour through the duration of the race. I didn't necessarily have a fully written out hydration plan that I was going to follow. I wanted to see how my body did and kind of how I was going. But with that in mind, right, going into it with a nutrition plan and not really a hydration plan, I found that all went out the window almost immediately. So for the first 4 miles, the out and back section, I didn't plan to eat or drink anything. I planned to just kind of get there, warm up, and kind of go about my business. Come mile 6, I was, into the first loop, and that's kind of when and where my fueling plan didn't start. So the goal was to hit 90 grams of carbs per hour. I called an audible there, and at mile 6, I started with my first gel and only took a little bit. So at mile 7, I did the same. At mile 8, I did the same, and that kind of solidified the plan. So instead of hitting a set carb goal per hour, it was now just taking in an undetermined amount of carbs per mile. Now, from a performance standpoint, it's not a great way to go about it. From an endurance perspective, knowing that the race was going to be a long couple of hours, I found that having something to focus on each and every mile was helpful and beneficial, and kind of kept my mind from wandering. So from that standpoint, it was effective. Going back and doing out all the math, I think I ended up around. So I think it was 1,800 calories consumed over 44 miles because I didn't eat for the first 6 miles. Divided that out, and I think I was around. I don't know. Let's do the math real quick. 1,800 divided by 44. 40, divide that by 4, right? So I'm sitting at 10.25 grams of carbs per mile, which I don't necessarily know or understand how that compares, without a pen and paper, but I found that worked for me for this race, because it was a lighter effort, so to speak, because I was in that lower heart rate zone, not pushing the pace as hard and as fast as you can go, but more focused on kind of the longevity and trying to stay, within a reasonable, performance zone. I found that worked, and I found that the distraction of it was also helpful. I went into this race without a set hydration plan, and I found that in consuming some carbs every mile, I found that it went hand in hand with consuming fluid. So I found myself having a pretty consistent sip of water, almost every mile. And I think that worked, hand in hand with the fueling, because it was a distraction for myself away from the fact that, oh, you're 5 hours into this, into this run, I found that worked hand in hand with the fueling to distract myself from a set performance perspective. Right, I don't have any data. Right, was it successful? Sure. Could it be better? Sure. My whole thing with this was to test it and to see, how my body would do after 50 kilometers, and I found that my body kind of held together with pretty consistent fueling through. With the consistent fueling, it held together through, every lap. The hydration definitely needed some work towards the end. Come mile 40, I think, 38, 40, I got a pretty nasty leg cramp that I really couldn't shake. So, I need to work on that. I don't know if that's a need for more electrolytes, or if that was strictly dehydration, or if that was just fatigue. That I don't know, but I'm going to try to figure that out and kind of work with that. But outside of that, the other thing that went pretty well was really easing into this race. There were quite a few people there. I think in the 6:30 start, it was the 50 mile and then the 100-kilometer race, and I think there were probably at that point 100 people on the course. So it would have been very easy to, feed into the energy of the crowd and the other people that were there and really push the pace. And, I did a pretty good job at holding myself back and really trying to ease in and warm up. especially knowing, this was the first time that I've run 50 miles. I think that the easing into it, over the course of, I think over the course of 19 miles really helped me in the back half to pick up the pace and kind of keep everything together come the end. So a couple of things that I found that I didn't necessarily plan for or that didn't go well. My nutrition choice, in gels being my primary carb source, wasn't necessarily feasible come the afternoon. I found that the temperature and sunlight kind of changed the flavor and texture and viscosity, and I found that it was absolutely nasty. And I planned for that. I had some backup options, which, good thing. But it's something that I needed to be mindful of and didn't necessarily plan for. Yeah, my hydration was also pretty good. Not having a set plan and just kind of consistent sipping mile to mile was helpful. From a performance standpoint, I really need to work at dialing both of those in to carry over to a usable plan, something that I can really structure and use for either another 50 mile or maybe a 50 kilometer or maybe a 100 mile or a 24-hour race. Another issue with my hydration was the lack of electrolytes. I planned to bring, I have a tub of electrolytes. I use Scratch Labs electrolyte mix. And I had mixed up a bottle to take with me in the car, but it was 2:30 in the morning when I left Sunday morning for this race, and left both that bottle that I had made and the tub of electrolytes sitting on the kitchen counter. I did not have a backup option, and that was probably detrimental. I don't know if I can attribute the leg cramps in the end of the race to dehydration or an electrolyte imbalance or just straight up fatigue. So I don't know. I need to probably go out and run another one of these races to test to see if electrolytes will make a difference. But I think the way that it went, being my first race, I think everything went well. So I guess we have some key lessons and takeaways, right? That's why everyone's here. So if you're gonna do your first 50 mile, right, respect the distance. This was the longest run that I've done in a while. It was my first 50-mile run. I knew kind of what I was getting into. I knew it was going to be a long day. Obviously there was a little bit of uncertainty in whether or not I was going to finish, because my primary goal was just to finish the run. So I think there needs to be a certain level of respect to that, right? It's not an easy feat, but it's definitely achievable, right? Don't get me wrong, it's doable, but you need to respect it. I had to do this run self-supported, and that, I don't know, did it make it easier? No. If you are going to do your first 50 mile, I highly suggest that you tell somebody and maybe try to get them to come along, have a crew with you, have somebody help you, set up your campsite, or where you're gonna have your drop bags, and have them there to help you at your transitions. Whether that's an aid station on a point to point, or if that's at the start finish of a loop course, just to have that support and that help. It makes it easier, especially for your first one, right? You may not know what you need, but you have people there to help you if you need it. My other kind of one of the other key takeaways from this, um, have a backup, and then have a backup to your backup for your nutrition. Your nutrition is critical for a 50-mile run. There's no way that you could do it if you didn't eat throughout, right? You would hit a wall somewhere. Probably, if you'd trained, you'd be okay through probably 50 kilometers, but after that, you'd really start to see diminishing returns and kind of get into a dangerous space. Having a backup is good. If your stomach turns, or you find that you run out, you switch over to the backup. If you have a second backup, that's even better, because you can kind of rotate them in and out, change up flavors and textures and tastes and all of that. So I guess the last two pieces of advice, right? Start far slower than you think. It's easy to get carried away by the crowd and the excitement and the energy of the start of a race, but you gotta be methodical, right? If it was a shorter distance, I'd say by all means you can go out hot and really start racking up some miles and push the pace. But for 50 miles, and if it's your first 50 mile, really start slow, be conservative, don't push it, get into it, settle down, make sure everything feels good, and know that you're going to be there for a while, right? There's no sense in trying to get out to the front of the pack only to get passed at mile 10. Why not stay in the back of the pack for the first 10, 20, 30 miles, and then pass people at, mile 40, mile 45, mile 48, right? It's a lot better of a feeling to pass people late in the race than it is in the beginning, right? If you plan it right, and you have your pacing strategy kind of figured out, come the end of the race, when people are starting to bonk and fall off and not able to keep it together, well, then you're there and you're just going along. It's a lot better of a feeling. I guess my last piece to this too, right? Don't stop. Don't give up. Now, obviously, if you're hurt, stop, right? Obviously, if you have like a sharp pain, or you fall, or something isn't right, stop. It's okay to DNF. If you're really not feeling it, and you're not mentally in it, and you're really pushing yourself into this danger zone, stop. What I mean is that your mind is gonna fight you, right? your mind is going to want to give up way before your body does. Don't let it. Rack up a bunch of small victories, right? Get through the first mile, get through the first 5K, get through the first 10K, get through the first 10 miles, get through, all of these smaller checkpoints, so to speak, right? And then come the end of the race, you're not caught in this negative loop of I'm tired, I hurt, everything hurts, this is miserable. You've already completed 1 mile, you've already completed 5K, you've completed 10K, you've completed 10 miles, right? You can look back and see, oh, I've already come this far, like, it's just a little bit more, just keep going. That is it's a mental game, especially at this distance and time, right? And if you get caught in that loop, you gotta break it as soon as you notice it, because it's gonna make things so difficult. I was able to kind of combat that early on with my nutrition and hydration, just kind of focusing on that every mile. And I think that was helpful. And kind of looking back on that, I didn't plan to do it that way. I kind of picked up on what I was doing subconsciously in the middle of the race, and then kind of fed into that and utilized that through the end of the race. But each step forward is a victory, right? If you get to a point in the race where you want to give up, just keep going. Put one foot in front of the other, right? Every step forward is a step in the right direction. You can do it. Your mind is going to fight you, but your body can do it. Just keep going. This is the part that needs some explaining, right? How did this race go for me? This race, the way that I structured it and the way I set up the goals behind this race, I set it up to be a training run. I set up my whole kind of race schedule from the beginning of the year to May, June as being incrementally longer. So I started with a half marathon to a marathon to a 50 mile. The half marathon date changed, the marathon got canceled, so I went half marathon to 50 mile. I don't recommend it. It's doable, but it's not fun. That being said, the way that this race was set up for me was not to be competitive. I didn't want to go out there and race. I wanted to go out there and test myself, see how my training has worked so far, see how my fueling is doing, and see kind of how my body will respond. And that's exactly what I did. All of my pace goals were just for me, and they were set on nothing other than, a couple of, 18, 20, 22 mile runs that I've done in my training block. And got to the race, did the race, everything was good. And then got to the finish and found out that I finished 5th at 7:37. So 7 hours, 37 minutes through 50 miles. And then I was 7:43 through the end of the race. and that got me a 5th place finish overall. And I am conflicted, right? This was my first 50 mile. I set it up as a training run. I went out to not be competitive, to just kind of go against myself, and then I got this result. Obviously, and it's something that I'm proud of. I'm glad that I went out there and I was able to do that. But it raises questions, right? How much more competitive can I be at 50 kilometers versus 50 miles? Is my training structured correctly? Could I be more competitive at 50 miles? What factors do I need to dial in some more if I'm going to continue to race this distance? So it raised some concerns in that aspect. It also raised concerns, how can I replicate what I did and carry it over to a longer distance? So the way that I structured and built my whole kind of year was building up to a 24-hour loop race in early June. So that is right around the corner. In early June, I have a 24-hour race, and my goal is to go at least 100 miles, and I want to have a top 10 finish in that race. So this training run looked promising. It really did, and I'm trying to be humble, but I think, I definitely had some mistakes, obviously. There were some things that went well, right? How much of this can I carry over into 100 mile? I'm not sure, and that's a little concerning to me, but again, it's an experiment, right? So stick around. 6 weeks out to my 24-hour race where I'm going to break 100 miles. So follow along. Let's see what these next 6 weeks look like. And I'm going to share some updates along the way, and then we'll go from there. So everybody have a good day. Hope you enjoy the video. Please like, subscribe, comment, do all the YouTube things. I don't know. Follow along. These next 6 weeks are going to be make or break, and I'm going to come back and be a little bit more active now that I'm kind of settled and ready to attack this goal. So I'm going to be uploading some more. If you want to see anything or have any specific questions, drop them in the comments and I'll make a video addressing them. So thank you for watching. Hope you guys enjoy.